Hey guys, Justin here with JHart Modelworks, and it is time for our first update on the Meng Ford GT40 buddy build with Chris from CD Scale Models. We have a bit done so far, so we definitely have the body in color. That was a lot of work, but we got a little bit of other stuff going on as well. So let's go ahead and get this camera flipped around and take a look at what we got going on. Alright, first things first, let's go ahead and we will talk about the body, front portion of our body here. We have our front hood, which I did go in and remove that centerpiece like I said I was probably going to. It does make it just 1000% easier to mask these stripes off. Speaking of the stripes, they aren't absolutely perfect, but they're fairly close. Like, it's slightly off over here, but I can live with it. And here is the back section. So there are a series of bolts on this rear spoiler. We have drilled them all out and we'll be replacing them later. And of course we got the little air intake scoops for the back. So those are looking good. We did all the normal stuff, you know, sanding off the mold seams, rescribing the panel lines, which was a lot of work. There's a lot of panel lines and they're very shallow. So we've got like all of these for the door. We've got these back here. You've got all the things for the door handles. These little trim parts here, which are latches. Kind of need to rescribe those. All of that's kind of shallow in here. This little opening. There's another one of those little hatches over here. So there's a lot of rescribing to do on this kit. The panel lines, though, the panel lines themselves, the mold seams are pretty easy. I mean, they were just like right through here. I mean, they're very easy to see, very easy to clean up. This plastic is very strange. If you're used to like the Tamiya or the Hasegawa or, you know, your standard Revel plastic, this sands different. This is definitely made of something different from the normal kit plastic that we're used to. When you're sanding on this, it sands up into like a feathery powder, almost like if you've ever sanded super glue. If you've done like a super glue fill and you've sanded it off, and a lot of the really good super glues like the Bob Smith stuff will sand off to like a powder. That's how all of this plastic sands. It's very different from typical kit plastic, and it's kind of soft. Like, sanding takes almost no work on this because it sands instantly. We did shoot a little bit of black primer inside, and then I kind of masked off the interior section. I don't want to get a lot of paint in here if I don't have to. I've got a little bit in here, but I don't think this is going to be too big of a deal. But with the way the fit is on this kit, you don't want, like, I will mask this off before I spray the clear coat, because I don't want that 2K to build up in here and get real thick. With this, you see it's already masked off in here, and the reason for that is there's another piece that has to be slid up in here, and it has to glue into place in here, and I don't want this getting real thick. And because I have to glue these pieces into place, I don't want paint on these parts, so I masked them off when I sprayed these as well. So this is actually bare plastic under here, and that's going to allow like the Tamiya extra thin to get a real good bond in there, instead of using like CA glue, which will be thick, because again, the tolerances on this kit are really, really tight. I did notice that when you put this down, this side wants to lift up slightly. I don't know if it's just warped a little bit or what. It doesn't look warped, but like I said, this side just doesn't want to sit exactly the way I want it to. And I didn't want to try and bend it with heat, you know, a heat gun or hair dryer or even hot water, because I'm afraid that I'll bend it too much the other direction and just warp it the wrong way, because it's just barely off. So my solution was to 3D model up these little squares, and these little squares have some magnets in them. I added some 2mm diameter, 1mm tall magnets in here. And there's another set of magnets in here. So when this is actually all together and the body's on there, the magnets will help pull this piece down, and because this piece will be glued into this cover, it actually helps, at least during dry fitting so far, it helps pull that corner down and it sits a lot nicer. And we're talking, it's off by like a millimeter maybe. So, I mean, it's not way off. It's just off enough to be noticeable. We did 3 coats of Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. I then masked the stripe areas off and sprayed 3 coats of the splash paints. This is the Lamborghini Verde Hermes. Paint bottle actually remained clean enough that you can still read the label. When spraying this, you constantly have to. It's a thin paint. A lot of the pearls are like that sometimes. Just the pearl likes to settle really quickly. So what I found is that when you spray it, you'll spray a coat. You want to take the paint back out of the airbrush and put it back in the bottle while you're waiting your 5 or 10 minutes for the gas off time. Remix the paint in the bottle and then put it back into the airbrush. That way you keep a consistent amount of the gold mixed in with the paint. And it doesn't all settle, because if you just leave it in the airbrush, it will settle on the bottom of the airbrush, and the moment you pull that trigger, you're going to get a blast of that gold pearl, and then it won't be even throughout the rest, and it's going to look really bad. So you definitely it's a lot more work to spray this, but it's a really nice color. I'm really happy with it. So after I got the green down, I removed the masking, I remasked over the green stuff, and I didn't want to use a fortune in Tamiya masking tape again. So Chris suggested that I pick up some of this 3M delicate surface masking tape, and this stuff did really well. It's like 48 millimeters wide, so you can cover like huge swatches with it. Just detack it once or twice. It's pretty much the same type of tape. It's a washi tape, kind of like, which is pretty much exactly what Tamiya is. Tamiya tape is washi tape, but this probably at least 6 to 10 times as much tape as I would have gotten from the big 40 millimeter Tamiya tape for like $8 or $9. So that's something to look at if you're doing a lot of big masking like this. Save your Tamiya tape for more important things. So we reverse masked over the green, and I added a 1mm strip of Tamiya's 1mm masking tape. I have the 1mm and the 3mm loaded in here together, and then I've got some 2mm here as well. Lots of masking, tons of masking tape. Got these all masked off. So there's a 1mm stripe in there that is still just the Mr. Surfacer black primer. In the middle, we sprayed 3 coats of our Ford liquid gray. And I really like this color combination. This is a really cool color combo in my opinion. It's different. It's not something you see every day. It's definitely not Ken Miles blue. We also have masked off the under tray, because this needs to be done in body color with your stripes, as well as that section up here. And then you've got these side pieces that need to be sprayed as well. And then all of this and the luggage compartments and all that needs to stay black. So there's a ton of masking here, but we've got our side trays done. And I did have to bust out the Expert Choice decals. Expert Choice is the same people that do bare metal foil. And I designed some Ford logos to go in here on the side stripes. Because all the kit ones, all the kit decals have color behind them. They're not just the little Ford letters. I would love to have just been able to cut the kit decals, but I couldn't. The backing on them just would not line up and wouldn't look right. So I ended up doing some Ford logos on some clear decal paper. I managed to get those to lay down. If you're having problems doing DIY decals and you're having them, they're curling up on you a lot, I have found that the problem is that I was spraying too much clear coat on them. A lot of times they'll tell you use clear coat. I use the microscale liquid decal film. I throw it in the airbrush and I spray it through the airbrush. It just goes down a lot easier, and I don't have to worry about rubbing on the ink and smearing it. I was putting too much on there, and when I would go to cut them off, I'd get them wet, I'd lay them on the body, and they would instantly curl up. Try using just very, very little decal film, and they laid down just beautifully. So that's probably going to cover the body portion. Now when I'm doing buddy build stuff and I'm just doing update videos instead of doing build videos, I tend to do build videos in like themed sections, like the body and then the chassis, and I tend to go all over the place when I'm just building off camera. So we have our interior here. Mr. Surface for 1500 black. I masked all of this off for these little sections back here and sprayed that with the airbrush. I used blue tack and got in here and masked all of this off for the shifting linkage. I was getting real annoyed with it, and then I was looking in here going, oh, that's going to be impossible. I did you can tell where I airbrushed through here and I didn't get it real well. I had to clean some of that up. I got tired of it, and then I remembered that I had picked up these Display paint markers. They're not like regular markers, they're actually acrylic paint with just these super fine tips on them. And that's the silver. I've got the silver in a metallic purple I was going to try and use on the Challenger build, but it just never really ended up getting used. All of this down here for the pedal box assembly, the little dots on the top of that battery, these long silver bits here, the front suspension arms, all of that was done with this acrylic marker. It's stable. It doesn't rub off. It's just really nice. If you have some issues with it, you can clean it up really easy with just a cotton bud and a little bit of, you could use isopropyl alcohol, but you're going to run the risk of damaging other paint. I used UMP airbrush cleaner and I was able to clean it up with no issue. I don't think it's a water-based acrylic. I think it's, I want to say I think it's an alcohol-based acrylic. I could be wrong though. But water just didn't seem to cut it for me. Might work for you. Your mileage may vary. But all these little pipes and tubes and all that was done with that marker, and I think that marker did a good job. We sprayed some light gunmetal, Tamiya light gunmetal, on the center bar, and then I hit that with some House of Colors organic green from Scale Finishes, and I liked the way that came out. Remember, I'm doing a road version of this car. And I sprayed just some Tamiya's flat green. Oh, that's the back of the seat, Justin. So flat green in the center of the seats, some more Mr. Surfacer for the outside. I really like the way those are looking. Do I want to spoil the surprise or not? Nah, I'm going to wait until I get to the engine parts before I show you these. So when we start doing more work on the engine, I'll show you kind of where my mind is going on that. Because, as you remember from the unboxing video, the valve covers are built in as one piece with the intake manifold. So I've got some thoughts on this. There's some things I'm doing with it. I did go in with my chisels and just chiseled out, because this is some fuel line, I think, some sort of tubing. And it's like just molded straight down. And I was like, no, we need to clean that up a little bit, get more definition so it looks more like a tube or a pipe laying on top of there instead of just a blob of plastic. I think that cleaned up a bit. It's a little nasty here. We'll do some sanding on that to clean it up a little bit more. Get some primer on there. You'll probably never even notice it, because of course you're also going to have a carburetor on here, air cleaner. But so a little bit of work on that, not a whole lot of work in the engine bay. But yeah, so that's about where we're at right now. Not a lot going on this very instant because I got distracted by Miguel with his 460 Ford engine, which if I have not released that video yet, that video will be coming soon. He sent me, he's got a new engine design that he put out for 3D printing. Sent me a copy to test print, and it's been awesome. So I'm throwing together a quick build video on that. I thought that would be kind of fun. So if it's up, go check it out. If it's not up, stay tuned. It will be out soon. But as for now, I'm going to turn around and get back to work. Next steps, I believe, are going to be focusing on clear coat. I do need to get this cleared in some 2K so I can let that sit for a bit before we need to go sand and polishing on it. And it's starting to get a little cooler. It hasn't, I mean, it's not like this is Texas. By a little cooler, we're still talking, 98. So maybe I can hit that in the morning when it's a little cooler, maybe in the 80s, and get that sprayed. I'm trying not to do it in the heat, because if you remember last year in the summer, I was spraying something, I forget what it was, and I had a lot of problems with the clear just coming out really thick, and it was just due to the heat. So we're going to go ahead and focus on getting the body cleared and finishing that up, and then we're going to start working on, I want to say, the front suspension, so that we can get that, because you can't get the interior put into the tub until you have the front suspension, because the front suspension goes in here. So probably get all that knocked out so that I can get this pushed down into place, and from there we can get that all glued in and start working on the interior and the engine and stuff like that. SuperCon will be next Saturday, September 9th, so if you are anywhere near the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I will put a link in the description section below. Feel free to check that out. I would love to see you there. I have rambled on enough for this video. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys, and I will catch you on the next one.